The atmosphere was thick with violet mist, swirling like a silent storm around Daniel Cross as he took a cautious step forward. His boots crunched against the strange crystalline sand beneath, each step echoing in the vast emptiness. This world was colder than he'd expected, its desolation a hollow silence that stretched endlessly around him, seeping into his bones. He'd traveled light years for this, yet the eerie tranquility sent a shiver down his spine. A voice interrupted the quiet, flowing like liquid silver from somewhere behind him. Daniel Cross. He froze, the hairs on the back of his neck prickling as the words drifted to him, chilling and unmistakably familiar. No one should have known his name on this barren moon. It was a last-minute decision, an uncharted venture. Slowly he turned, his eyes scanning the mist. "Who's there?" His voice was steady, but his pulse betrayed him, thrumming hard beneath his skin. A shape materialized in the mist, stepping forward as if emerging from the fabric of his own dreams. She was tall, impossibly so, her form graceful yet hauntingly still. Her skin, dark as midnight, shimmered with an unnatural gleam, catching hints of the moon's dim light. She was beautiful, achingly so, and her eyes, a deep, star-flecked silver, met his with an intensity that rooted him in place. "You," he whispered, though he didn't know why he felt he knew her. "Yes," she replied, her voice a soft echo that lingered far too long in the air. He swallowed, his throat dry. "How do you know my name?" She tilted her head, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Names have a way of finding themselves to me. It's only fair given that I know so little about this place." "What are you?" he demanded, the coldness of her gaze somehow more unsettling than the barren landscape. His hand inched toward the blaster on his belt, but something in her gaze made him stop short. "I am Kaelin," she said simply, a name as ancient as the stars themselves, spoken with a weight that made him shiver. "And I am the one who has been waiting." "For me?" He tried to keep his tone steady, but the doubt cracked through. Kaelin's eyes narrowed, a glint of amusement flashing across them. "You think you chose this path, Daniel Cross? That it was your choice to land here in this place?" He clenched his jaw. "If it wasn't my choice, whose was it?" Her expression softened, almost pitying. "You'll find that some things were decided long before you even existed. But please," she gestured, her movements as fluid as water, "make yourself comfortable. You'll be here for quite some time." A strange, instinctual dread seized him. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to run, but his legs felt as if they'd turned to stone. "Why can't I move?" he murmured, struggling against the invisible weight pinning him in place. Kaelin watched him with quiet amusement. "You won't leave," she said softly. "Not until I release you." "Release me?" He felt like he was trying to argue with a storm, his words swallowed by the vast, silent tension between them. "You're not holding me prisoner. I can go when I want." Her gaze softened, a glimmer of something almost sorrowful flashing across her eyes. "You don't understand yet, but you will, soon." He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "What do you want from me?" Kaelin's lips parted, and for a moment she seemed to struggle for the right words. "I want your help, though I doubt you would give it willingly if you knew the cost." "My help?" He laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Why would someone like you need my help?" She seemed to consider this, her gaze piercing, searching. "Because, Daniel, you have something I don't, a freedom I cannot claim." A pause lingered between them, heavy and laden with secrets he couldn't begin to grasp. "If you're trapped, why not just leave?" Her expression twisted into something dark, unreadable. "Leaving isn't so simple for me. I am bound, and those bindings are intricate." He frowned, studying her. "What kind of bindings?" "You wouldn't understand. You may not even survive understanding," she said, almost wistful. "But in time, perhaps you'll see. And when you do, you might even be willing to help me." He laughed again, though this time there was a nervous edge to it, You're not making any sense." Kaylin moved closer until her face was inches from his, and he felt the soft, icy brush of her breath against his skin. "Daniel, you feel it, don't you? This place, the way it clings to you, refusing to let you go." He swallowed hard, unwilling to admit it, but yes, he felt it, the strange pressure, the invisible weight that kept him in place. "So what do you want from me?" "Your trust," she said simply. "It may seem like a small thing, but for me, it is everything." "Trust?" he echoed, almost scoffing. "And why exactly should I trust you?" "Because," Kaylin replied, her voice a soft, dangerous murmur, "I'm the only thing standing between you and this place devouring you whole." He took a shaky breath. "You say that like I have no other choice." "Choices are illusions here, Daniel." Her eyes, twin points of starlight, held his with an intensity that cut through him like a blade. "You will either help me or be consumed by the very thing that binds me." His mind raced, 1,000 questions crashing together. "What binds you, Kaylin?" For the first time, he thought he saw a flicker of fear cross her face, as though he'd spoken a forbidden word. "It is an ancient curse, one that feeds on beauty, power, and isolation." "A curse?" he repeated, his skepticism returning. "You expect me to believe in curses?" Her smile returned, shadowed and full of secrets. "I expect you to see eventually. This place will show you everything, if it doesn't consume you first." He took a step back, or tried to, but she moved with him, always one step closer. "And if I don't help you?" he challenged, though his voice was barely more than a whisper. "Then you'll be bound here as I am, forever trapped between time and memory." Her words dripped with an eerie conviction, and he found himself holding his breath. "Why me?" he asked, almost desperate. "Why did you choose me?" She let out a soft sigh, her gaze far away. "I didn't choose you, Daniel. You were drawn to this place, as I was once drawn, by forces neither of us truly understand." They stood in silence, each waiting for the other to break, to yield. Finally, she extended a hand, her fingers outstretched, glistening as though dusted with frost. "Stay, and you may find answers," she said. "Flee, and you'll be running from something that will follow you to the end of time." His heart hammered as he stared at her hand. Everything in him screamed to turn away, to flee, but that inexplicable force held him rooted in place, as if he were tethered to her very soul. "Stay," she murmured again, her voice soft and hypnotic. Against all reason, he reached out, his fingers hovering above hers, and as he closed the gap between them, a sudden, blinding cold shot through him, sinking deep into his bones. In that instant, Daniel knew he was caught, and whatever this woman was, whatever curse she bore, it had now bound them both. The last thought that flickered through his mind was the faintest whisper of a question, trembling in the depths of his consciousness. What had he just done? Daniel's skin tingled, as if electricity crackled beneath the surface, a strange chill that lingered long after his hand had left Kaylin's. Her presence seemed to linger too, filling the space around him with an oppressive, haunting pull. His mind fought to piece together the inexplicable, but the strangeness of this world, and of her, defied logic. She watched him with that same unwavering gaze, as if studying the effect of her presence on him, gauging every movement, every expression. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice low and soft. "How do you feel, Daniel?" "Like I just plunged my hand into a glacier," he replied, rubbing his hand absent-mindedly, though the sensation was as much in his mind as it was in his skin. "What did you do to me?" Kaylin's mouth curled into a small, enigmatic smile. "We've only begun," she murmured. "The bond between us is not yet complete." He drew back, shaking his head. "Bond? What bond? I didn't agree to any of this." "Oh, but you did, the moment you set foot on this moon," she said, her eyes glimmering with an unreadable intensity. "This place draws only those who seek something beyond their reach, and it always asks a price." I don't want anything from you or this place, he retorted, but his own words sounded hollow. Deep down, a part of him knew he was lying. Is that so? She replied, arching an eyebrow. Then why venture this far? Why leave everything familiar, only to find yourself here, alone, on the edge of known space? Daniel was silent, unwilling to admit his own restlessness, the curiosity that had led him to seek out uncharted worlds in the first place. He shrugged, trying to shrug off her words. Maybe I just wanted peace and quiet, somewhere no one could find me. Then perhaps, she said, stepping closer, you're exactly where you need to be. He felt the strange pull between them again, a magnetic force drawing him to her, even as his instincts screamed at him to retreat. You're toying with me, Kaylin. She let out a low, humorless chuckle. Toying, perhaps. Or merely waiting. For what? He demanded, frustrated by her evasiveness. If you want my help, stop speaking in riddles. Riddles are all I have, she replied, her voice barely a whisper. If I spoke the truth outright, you'd run, Daniel, and I cannot have you running. He frowned, crossing his arms. Try me. I'm not afraid of the truth. Oh? She tilted her head, studying him, and he felt a strange pang, as if she saw through to some hidden part of him he kept buried. Very well then, but remember you asked. She gestured for him to follow her deeper into the mist, her movements as graceful as shadows weaving through light. Reluctantly, he trailed behind her, each step making him feel as if he were descending into a dream or a nightmare. They stopped at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a valley shrouded in dense fog. Beyond, faint, otherworldly lights flickered, casting an eerie glow over the alien landscape. She stood silently, gazing into the valley, and he sensed she was searching for words. Finally, she spoke. I am bound to this place, Daniel, she said, her voice carrying a weight he couldn't fully comprehend. This moon, this prison, it has claimed me, made me part of itself. I am its beauty, its curse, its unyielding sorrow, and I have been alone for centuries, trapped in this twilight realm. Trapped? He couldn't mask the sympathy that crept into his voice, despite himself. Why? She looked at him, her eyes bright and full of ancient pain. Because beauty is a weapon, Daniel. A powerful, insidious weapon. I was cursed for using mine to ensnare, to destroy. And now I am the victim of my own creation. Beauty? That's your curse? He scoffed, the disbelief evident in his tone. You think being beautiful is a curse? Kaylin's gaze sharpened, her eyes darkening. It is not the beauty itself, but what it does. It lures, ensnares, like a spider's web. Once you're caught, there is no escape, no salvation. Only endless desire, endless torment. Her voice grew cold, as if the very words were carved from ice. He felt a shiver run through him. And you expect me to help you break this curse? She nodded slowly. You are different, Daniel. The curse cannot touch you the way it touches others. There is something in you, a fire that the web cannot bind, a resilience it cannot break. He shook his head, backing away. This is insane. You're insane. Perhaps. She took a step toward him, her expression unreadable. But I am not wrong. You came here for a reason, even if you cannot see it. He stopped, staring at her. What do you mean? What reason? Loneliness, she said softly, her voice tinged with a sadness that made him look away. A soul that longs for something it cannot name, a desire to be known, to be seen, and the fear of what that might mean. Her words struck too close, peeling away his defenses with an unsettling ease. Don't pretend you know me, he said, though his voice wavered. Oh, but I do. She took another step closer, her eyes piercing through him. I have seen countless souls pass through this place, each one drawn by the same desire, the same emptiness. But none could stay. None could withstand what I am. He swallowed, his throat dry. And you think I can? You already are. She reached out, her hand hovering just inches from his face. He could feel the chill radiating from her skin, like the touch of winter itself. "This place has claimed you, Daniel, just as it claimed me." He took a step back, though he could feel her pull like gravity, an unseen force he could not escape. "So what now? What do you expect me to do?" She lowered her hand, her expression hardening. "You must stay. You must understand the curse, endure its weight. Only then will you find a way to free me, or to destroy me." "Destroy you?" He balked, taken aback by her bluntness. "Yes," she said, her gaze steady. "That is the choice you will face in time. Free me or end me. Either way, you will be bound to me until you decide." Daniel stared at her, his mind reeling. The idea of being trapped with her, in this bleak, desolate place, was a prospect that filled him with dread. Yet he couldn't deny the pull he felt, the urge to unravel her secrets, to understand the strange, dark power she wielded. "Fine," he said at last, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I'll stay, for now." She gave him a small, sad smile. "For now is all I ask." They stood in silence for a long moment, each studying the other, until he finally broke the stillness. "Tell me then, tell me what this curse really is." Kaylin hesitated, her expression clouded. "It is a hunger," she said softly, as though the words hurt to speak. "A hunger for beauty, for desire, for life itself. It consumes, endlessly, leaving nothing but a hollow, aching void." "A hunger?" He frowned, not understanding. "How can beauty consume?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Because beauty, true beauty, is never satisfied. It takes and takes, until there is nothing left, and those who are drawn to it are devoured just as I was." "Then how are you still here?" he asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. Her gaze turned inward, haunted. "Because I became the thing I devoured. I became the curse itself, bound to it, trapped in an endless cycle of longing and despair." Daniel felt a pang of pity, though he couldn't bring himself to trust her completely. "And you think I can break it?" "I think," she said, meeting his eyes, "that you are the only one who can try." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of their implications. He felt as if a door had opened, leading into an abyss he could barely comprehend. And yet, he couldn't look away. He couldn't leave. For reasons he didn't fully understand, he felt as though he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. Daniel could feel the weight of Kaylin's gaze on him, her silence a palpable force. The atmosphere between them had shifted, thickened, as if something unseen and ancient was pressing down on both of them, waiting for the final act to unfold. He took a steadying breath, his resolve wavering as he faced her. "If I'm the only one who can help you," he began slowly, "then tell me, Kaylin, what exactly do I have to do?" She hesitated, her silver eyes flickering with something he hadn't seen before, vulnerability. "It is not something you may wish to hear. I'm past that point, don't you think?" His voice was hard, but there was a quiet plea beneath it. "After all this, you owe me the truth." A small, sad smile played at her lips. "Very well, then. But know that the truth is often more of a curse than any enchantment." "Then show me," he replied, his voice barely more than a whisper. Kaylin raised a hand, her fingers glistening with a faint light that seemed to pulse from within her. "Look," she said softly, gesturing to the violet mist surrounding them. "Look through my eyes." He blinked, the mist swirling around them beginning to shift, the landscape bending, fracturing. It was as if he were peering into another world, another time. The crystals around them morphed, reflecting images of countless faces, trapped in silent screams, their eyes hollow, each of them transfixed by an otherworldly beauty that seemed to siphon their very souls. "What? What is this?" he murmured, a chill creeping over him. "These are the ones who came before you," she whispered, her gaze distant and haunted. drawn to this place, entranced by beauty, consumed by desire. You did this to them? His voice was barely audible, a mixture of horror and disbelief. No, she replied, her tone soft yet fierce. I am but a vessel for a curse older than any of us, a curse that feeds on beauty and then twists it into something grotesque, something endless and empty. It took them, one by one, each of them as helpless as you are now. He pulled back, shaking his head. But I'm still here, I haven't... He swallowed hard, unable to finish the thought. That is why I believe you are the one who can break it, she said, her voice heavy with a strange mix of hope and dread. The others lacked what you have, an unyielding spirit, one that refuses to bend to beauty or power. But to break the curse, you must make a choice. Daniel took a deep breath, gathering the courage to ask. And that choice is... Her eyes met his, filled with a sorrow so deep it seemed to seep into his very soul. To release me, she whispered, or to bind yourself to me forever. Bind myself? He echoed, a sinking feeling forming in his stomach. Yes, she replied, her voice barely more than a murmur. To break the curse, you must either set me free, severing my existence from this place, or you must remain here, bound to me for eternity, sharing in my fate. Why would I stay? He asked, his voice hoarse, the weight of her words crashing over him. Because, she said, her eyes fixed on his, if you free me, I will become mortal. My beauty, my power, my very essence will fade, leaving me as nothing more than a shadow, a faint memory. I will lose everything. And if I stay? He asked, his voice tight. If you stay, she replied, her tone soft and almost tender, you will share my burden. Together we would keep this place contained, prevent it from consuming others. The gravity of her words settled over him, the reality of his options sinking in. If he set her free, she would be mortal, vulnerable, possibly even forgotten. And if he stayed... Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? He demanded, his voice thick with anger and frustration. Would you have believed me? She asked, her voice laced with a bitter edge. Would you have stayed, knowing you'd have to choose between your freedom and my existence? He was silent, his gaze falling to the ground. She was right. He would have run, fled at the first chance. But now, after everything he'd seen, everything he'd learned, the choice wasn't so simple. You're asking me to give up my life, he said, his voice barely a whisper. To stay here forever, trapped with you in this place. Yes, she replied, her eyes softening, a faint vulnerability flickering in her expression. I am asking, but I will not force you. He looked away, grappling with the decision before him. If I set you free, you'll lose everything. And yet, she murmured, her gaze distant, I will gain a freedom I have never known. A chance to live, even if only for a moment. He turned back to her, his mind racing. Then, you've never truly lived? She shook her head, a sadness softening her features. I have existed, yes. I have endured, and watched as those around me withered and faded. But to truly live, to feel the sun on my skin, to taste the sweetness of life. No, I have not lived, Daniel. Her words hung between them, heavy with longing and regret. For the first time, he saw her not as the beautiful, dangerous entity that had ensnared him, but as something else, something fragile, yearning. Then maybe... He hesitated, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Maybe you deserve that chance. She looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and something else, something soft and vulnerable. You would set me free? He nodded slowly, though his heart pounded with fear. Yes, if that's what it takes to end this, to give you a chance to be free, then yes. Kaylin's eyes filled with a quiet, profound gratitude, and she reached out, her hand trembling as it rested against his cheek. "Thank you, Daniel," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me what I could never have taken on my own." He closed his eyes, feeling the coldness of her touch, the strange electric energy that pulsed from her. As he opened them, he saw the mist around them shifting, fading, as though her very presence was unraveling. "Wait, what's happening?" he asked, his voice laced with panic. "The curse is lifting," she replied, her voice soft, almost ethereal. "I am being released, and so are you." He felt a strange pull, like gravity in reverse, lifting him as the world around them dissolved into a cascade of light. He held her gaze, her face the only anchor in the blinding brilliance that surrounded them. "Will I see you again?" he managed, his voice tight with emotion. She smiled, a soft, wistful smile. In another life, perhaps. And then, like a candle blown out in the night, she was gone. The world around him vanished, the violet mist dissipating, and he felt himself falling into a vast, silent darkness. For a moment, he was certain he'd been pulled into oblivion, that he was as lost as those souls he'd seen reflected in the crystals. But then he opened his eyes. He was standing on his ship, the familiar hum of its engines vibrating beneath his feet. The control panel glowed softly in the dim light, the stars stretching endlessly beyond the viewport. He blinked, disoriented, his mind struggling to process what had happened. It felt like a dream, a strange, vivid dream he couldn't shake. He touched his cheek, half expecting to feel the lingering coldness of her hand, but there was nothing. "Kaylin?" he whispered, his voice a bare breath. Only silence answered. He glanced out at the stars, a sense of loss settling over him. He was free, yes. He was alive. But somewhere out there, in some far corner of the universe, a beautiful, deadly being had just taken her first breath as a mortal. As he reached out to adjust the controls, his hand froze. There, etched faintly into his palm, was a mark, a delicate swirling pattern, like the trace of frost on glass, a reminder of her, of the choice he'd made, of the soul he'd set free. For a long moment, he stared at the mark, his mind quiet, his heart full of questions that might never be answered. And then, with a deep, steadying breath, he turned his ship toward the stars, carrying with him the memory of a beauty that had been as deadly as it was unforgettable. The first thing Jason Marlowe felt when he came to was the burning in his lungs, sharp and acidic, clawing at his throat. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, he was blinded by the strange brilliance of the world around him. Blue sands shimmered under a sky that held two suns, both blinding and cold. He groaned, lifting a hand to shield his eyes, wincing at the weight in his bones. "Are you awake finally?" a voice said, silken yet edged, coming from just above him. Jason froze, his heartbeat stumbling over itself. The voice was clear, melodic, and distinctly feminine, but not human. He sat up slowly, feeling his muscles strain, and turned to face the source of the voice. A figure knelt beside him, her form cloaked in something resembling shadow and silver. She watched him with dark, mercurial eyes, her skin a shifting, iridescent hue that reflected the strange light of the alien suns. Her face was sharp, almost haunting, and her gaze held him in a grip as strong as iron. For a moment he could only stare, transfixed. Who are you?" he managed, his voice raspy and hoarse. She tilted her head, and her mouth curved into a gentle, almost pitying smile. "You don't remember," she murmured, as if that fact pained her. "But it's all right. I'm here now. I've found you again." Jason's confusion only deepened. He struggled to his feet, every step reminding him of the crash, the fiery plunge through the atmosphere, the last frantic seconds as his ship hurtled toward the surface. He should have died, he realized. By all accounts, he should be scattered across this alien landscape. Yet here he was, alive if dazed and bewildered, and here she was, this strange, impossible woman who looked at him as if they shared a lifetime of memories. "I don't understand," he said, taking a step back, his mind struggling to make sense of her words. I don't know you." The woman's gaze softened, and she reached out, her fingers brushing the back of his hand. Her touch was cool, almost electric, sending a shiver up his arm. "My name is Zila," she said, voice low and laced with sadness. "And you are my beloved, my Aryan. You've returned to me, even though you do not remember. But that's the way it always begins, isn't it?" Jason pulled his hand back, blinking at her in disbelief. Your beloved?" He let out a short, incredulous laugh, though there was no humor in it. "I think you have me mistaken for someone else. My name is Jason Marlowe. I'm a scientist from Earth." Zila regarded him with a gentle, almost amused smile, as though his words were some sort of quaint joke. "Names are fluid, Aryan," she replied softly. "You have worn many in our time together, just as I have. But the heart knows, even if the mind has forgotten." "This is absurd," Jason muttered, more to himself than to her. He took another step back, scanning the landscape around him, hoping to see some sign of his crashed ship, or a path, or any way out of this surreal encounter. "Look, Zella," he said carefully, as if reasoning with her might somehow break this spell. "I don't know who you think I am, but I promise you, I am not this Aryan." Her gaze remained calm, unshaken by his words. "It is natural that you resist," she said, her tone filled with infinite patience. "You always do at first, but in time, you will remember, just as you always do." Jason felt a spike of frustration rise within him, but it was laced with something else, something unsettlingly close to fear. He forced himself to take a steadying breath. "Listen to me, Zila," he said, his voice firm. "I have no idea what's going on here. I don't know you, and I certainly don't belong here. I'm going to find my ship, call for rescue, and leave. I don't want any trouble." She stepped closer, so close he could see faint patterns along her skin, faint ripples of light and color that seemed to shift and swirl as though alive. "You've been away for so long," she murmured, almost to herself. "Far longer than usual. I had nearly given up hope, and now you're here." Her fingers reached up to graze his cheek, but he flinched back before she could touch him. "I don't belong here," he insisted, his tone growing sharper. "I need to leave." Zila tilted her head, her gaze flickering with an emotion he couldn't quite read. "You may try," she said at last, her voice laced with quiet sadness. "But you will not find your way. Not until you are ready to remember." Before he could respond, she turned and began to walk away, her steps graceful and unhurried, her form almost blending into the silvery light around them. Jason watched her go, torn between the instinct to follow and the overwhelming urge to run in the opposite direction. Every rational part of him screamed to get away, to find his ship and figure out a way off this cursed planet. But something deeper, something he couldn't quite name, pulled him toward her. With a reluctant sigh, he began to follow, keeping his distance, his gaze wary. Zala led him through a landscape of bizarre formations, rocky spires that twisted like frozen tendrils, flora that glowed with a faint, otherworldly light. The silence of the place was almost suffocating, broken only by the occasional whisper of wind. After a long silence, Jason spoke, his tone guarded. "If I really am this person you say I am, then why don't I remember you? Why would I forget something so important?" She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes gleaming in the strange light. "It is the nature of the curse," she replied softly. "Each time you return, you come to me as a stranger who does not know me, who does not remember what we were." She looked away, and he caught a flicker of pain in her expression. "But that is the price we pay for this love of ours, to find each other anew in every lifetime. And you always do, eventually." Her words left him speechless. He searched her face, looking for any sign that this was a joke, a deception of some kind. But her gaze was steady, unwavering, and that strange sense of familiarity, of something just beyond his reach, lingered at the edges of his mind. He shook his head, trying to dispel the feeling. "I don't believe in fate, or curses, or reincarnation," he said firmly, though his voice trembled just slightly. "I'm a scientist, Zila. I believe in what I can see, what I can measure and prove. And nothing about any of this makes sense." She smiled, a wistful, knowing smile. "Not everything in this universe can be measured, Arion. Some things simply are as they have always been, and you have always been mine." Her words stirred something in him, a strange mixture of unease and longing. He clenched his fists, fighting to keep his voice steady. "I don't know what you think we were, or what you think I am to you, but I am not your Arion. I'm not anyone's." Zila's gaze softened, and she stepped closer, her voice a low, comforting murmur. "You say that now," she whispered, "but the heart remembers what the mind forgets." Jason's resolve to escape only hardened with every step he took through the otherworldly landscape, but the deeper they ventured, the more unsettling his surroundings became. Towering crystalline structures cast eerie shadows on the blue sands, and the silence hung thick, only disturbed by the soft crunch of their steps. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as though unseen eyes were tracking his every move. "How much farther?" he asked, unable to keep the edge from his voice. He wasn't sure where she was taking him, and each step felt like a descent deeper into the unknown. Zela turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You're restless," she observed, a faint smile curving her lips. "It's strange. Usually by now you're asking questions about our home, about the life you left behind." "Our home?" He gave a humorless laugh, waving an arm at the alien landscape. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but none of this is mine. I've never been here before today." "Your mind speaks only of today," Zela murmured, as if she were commenting on the weather. "But your heart has been here before, across lifetimes." Jason felt a flare of frustration. "If you keep talking like that, I'm going to turn around and walk back the way we came." "Then do so," she said calmly, her gaze unwavering. "But I warn you, the sands are endless. You will find nothing but the remnants of your wrecked vessel, and those will provide you no answers." Jason felt his jaw tighten. "You seem awfully sure of that." She held his gaze, and in the silence that stretched between them, he felt as though she were peeling back the layers of his defenses, one by one. "Because you're meant to be here," she said softly. "And those who are meant to be here are always drawn." "Drawn to what?" Jason demanded, his voice rising despite himself. Zila's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the distant mountains rose like dark teeth against the pale sky. "To the place where all things converge," she whispered, almost as if to herself. "Where memories live, where you might remember who you are." "Who I am?" He shook his head, exasperated. "I know exactly who I am, and I can assure you I'm not some ancient lover from another lifetime. I'm Jason Marlowe, scientist and pilot for the Interstellar Exploration Division, and I am trying to get off this rock." She looked at him for a long moment, and then, to his astonishment, she laughed, a low melodic sound that seemed out of place in the desolate silence around them. "Ah, Arion," she said, her eyes twinkling with mirth. "You have always had such fire. It's one of the things I cherish most about you," he huffed, looking away, though he couldn't deny the strange fluttering sensation her laughter stirred in him. "Stop calling me that." "But it's your name," she said, with the soft patience of someone explaining something to a child. "Jason Marlowe is merely the mask you wear in this life. What you're talking about is—" He struggled to find the right word, something that might tear through the hold she seemed to have on his thoughts. "It's fantasy, pure fantasy." Zela tilted her head, considering him. "Perhaps," she conceded, "but even fantasies can be true in their own way." He turned away, letting out a frustrated breath. "Then let's make a deal," he said, forcing calm into his voice. Take me to the wreckage of my ship. Let me call for help. I'll be out of your hair, and you can get on with whatever life you have here." Silence stretched between them, tense and thick. Finally, Zila spoke, her voice softer, almost regretful. "I cannot let you go. Not yet. Not until you see what I have to show you." "And what is that, exactly?" he asked, a note of bitterness creeping into his tone. Her gaze was distant, as though she were looking past him, seeing something he could not. "Your past. Our past. The truth that binds us." Jason resisted the urge to scoff, but the earnestness in her eyes gave him pause. Against his better judgment, he felt the faintest glimmer of curiosity. "Fine," he said finally, crossing his arms. "Show me. Prove to me that there's some truth to what you're saying." Zella's expression softened, and she nodded, a hint of relief in her gaze. "Come then," she said, turning and gesturing for him to follow. They walked in silence, the vast expanse around them shifting subtly as the light dimmed. He noticed that the shadows cast by the crystalline formations seemed to lengthen, twisting like tendrils. The silence grew heavier, pressing down on him, and Jason found himself glancing over his shoulder, half expecting something to emerge from the shadows. "Why is it so quiet here?" he asked, unable to shake the growing tension in his chest. "This is a place between places," Zila replied, her voice low. "Here, the past and present overlap, and the silence holds memories, echoes of what was." Jason shook his head, not quite understanding. "And where are we going exactly?" "To the sanctum," she said simply. "The place where our souls are bound." He raised an eyebrow. "The sanctum?" "It is a sacred place," Zila explained, glancing at him. "The heart of our world. The place where lovers meet and part, where souls find each other across lifetimes." Jason's skeptical expression must have been evident, for she sighed softly, a hint of sadness in her gaze. "I know you do not believe," she murmured, "but I ask only that you listen. Perhaps in time you will understand." They continued in silence until the terrain changed subtly beneath his feet. The ground grew smoother, the sands giving way to something harder, glistening beneath a faint glow. And then, before he realized it, they had arrived. The sanctum was a vast, open space, bordered by towering columns of translucent crystal that seemed to pulse faintly with an inner light. The air was cool, and a strange, almost electric energy hummed around them, making the hairs on the back of Jason's neck stand on end. He stared, feeling a curious mix of awe and wariness. What is this place?" he whispered, barely aware of his own words. "This is where our souls have met, lifetime after lifetime," Zila said, stepping forward, her gaze reverent. "Where our vows were spoken, where our bond was sealed." Jason took a hesitant step forward, staring at the strange columns, which seemed to flicker with images, vague, blurred shapes that hinted at faces, at figures entwined in moments of tenderness and sorrow. He blinked, shaking his head, trying to clear the illusion. "Do you see them?" Zila's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Do you remember?" Jason shook his head, swallowing hard. None of this is real." Zila turned to him, her gaze steady. "The heart remembers, Arian, even if the mind does not." She stepped closer, her hand reaching for his, and he found himself frozen, unable to pull away as her fingers brushed his. And then suddenly, he was somewhere else. The image that filled his mind was hazy, like a half-forgotten dream. He stood in a field of silver grass under a sky that glimmered with 3 moons. Zila was there, smiling at him, her eyes filled with love and sorrow, her hand reaching for his. And he knew her in that moment, knew her as surely as he knew his own breath. He saw flashes of a life, of whispered promises and parting tears, of laughter and embraces beneath starlit skies. It was him, and it was not him. But it felt real, more real than anything he'd ever known. He stumbled back, gasping, and the vision faded. He was in the sanctum again, the pulsing crystals around him, Zila's gaze steady on his. "Do you understand now?" she asked, her voice soft, filled with a strange, quiet hope. Jason shook his head, his heart pounding. I don't know what that was," he stammered, breathless. But it wasn't real. It couldn't be real. "It was a memory," Zila replied, her gaze unwavering. "Your memory. The life you shared with me. Before you left." He wanted to laugh, to dismiss her words, but he couldn't ignore the image lingering in his mind, vivid and unshakable. He looked away, clenching his fists. "No," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "This is impossible." Zila stepped closer, her hand reaching for his, and he flinched, pulling back. Her gaze softened, and she let her hand fall to her side, a faint, resigned smile tugging at her lips. "I do not ask you to believe," she murmured, "only to remember." Jason closed his eyes, taking a shaky breath. His mind was a storm, filled with fragments and images that felt alien, yet achingly familiar. He opened his eyes, looking at her with something close to desperation. "Why me?" he whispered. "Why do you think I'm him?" "Because you are," she replied simply, "and because I am yours." Her words hung between them, heavy with a promise he couldn't quite grasp. For a long moment, they stood in silence, and Jason felt a pull, deep and insistent, as though some invisible force were drawing him toward her. But still, he resisted, his mind clinging to the logic that had always guided him. He took a step back, tearing his gaze from hers. "I need time," he said, barely recognizing his own voice. Zila nodded, her gaze filled with understanding. "Then take it," she whispered. "But remember, the heart is patient, even when the mind resists." With that, she turned, leaving him alone in the sanctum, surrounded by silent whispers and the haunting echoes of a past he could neither accept nor deny. The silence in the sanctum was deafening, suffocating, as if the very walls, if they could be called that, had absorbed every sound, every thought, until only the pulse of the distant stars and the soft hum of the crystalline columns filled the air. Jason Marlowe stood alone, his breath ragged, his pulse pounding in his ears. He was trapped in a web of visions, of images, of truths and lies that blurred together like the fading streaks of a dream he couldn't escape. The memories he had seen, if they could even be called memories, lingered, clinging to the edges of his consciousness. They were like fragments of something too beautiful, too impossible to hold on to. And yet, he felt the undeniable truth that they were his. They had to be. There was no other explanation for the way his chest ached with an emotion he couldn't name, a longing that twisted deep within him, reaching for something lost. But no. He clenched his fists, fighting the pull that Zela had so easily set into motion. This was madness. He wasn't Aryan. He wasn't a man out of time, bound to her in some cruel twist of fate. He was Jason Marlowe, a scientist, a pilot, a man stranded on a hostile world with no way home. A voice broke through the fog of his thoughts, low and soft, a thread of silk in the stillness. "I knew you would come around." Jason whirled, his heart racing. There, standing at the edge of the sanctum, her silhouette framed by the faint glow of the crystal columns, was Zila. Her eyes, deep and endless, caught his, and for a moment, he felt the weight of an entire universe pressing down on him. He took a step back, suddenly dizzy, unsure of whether the floor beneath him would stay steady. "I didn't come around," he snapped, his voice ragged. "I'm not who you think I am. You're forcing me into this. Whatever this is, I want to leave." Zila stepped closer, her footsteps soundless, as though she were walking on air. "You've already left, Aryan," she said softly. "Left me, time and time again, but you always return." Her words hit him like a physical blow. He gritted his teeth, trying to hold on to the fragments of his own identity, to the life he knew. "I don't belong here. I don't belong with you." She stopped just in front of him, her face so close that he could see the fine shimmer of her skin, the delicate curve of her lips. Her voice was a whisper, an intimacy that clung to the air like a shared secret. "But you do belong to me, Jason. Don't you see?" Her fingers reached for him, but this time, he didn't pull away. His chest tightened with a strange, inexplicable warmth. "You are Aryan. You always have been." Jason closed his eyes, his mind swirling with the impossible, the overwhelming certainty of her words. He wanted to scream at her, to deny everything, but something in his chest, something deep and aching, refused to let him. "You're wrong," he breathed, though it sounded like a plea rather than a statement. "This can't be true. It can't." Zella's hand cupped his cheek, and he couldn't stop himself from leaning into the touch. The connection was there, undeniable. "You've always known it was true," she whispered, "and so have I." The world seemed to tilt, like the earth beneath his feet was shattering, breaking open to reveal something beyond the veil of reason. His knees buckled, but Zila's grip on him was steady, anchoring him to something both ancient and unexplainable. For a moment, the room, no, the whole world, faded, leaving only her and the sensation of everything he had ever known slipping through his fingers. Suddenly, everything went still. Jason felt it, a tremor in the air, an electric pulse that surged through the ground beneath them. His eyes snapped open, and in the crystalline columns surrounding them, something shifted. The faint images he had seen before, fragments of his other life, were no longer just hazy memories. They were solid, like shadows that had come to life. Faces, voices, people, places. His mind recoiled as they twisted around him, moving faster, blurring into a whirlwind of forgotten lives. "No," he gasped, pushing away from her. "No, this isn't real." But Zila was already gone. In an instant, the space around him exploded with light, blinding and white, and Jason was thrown back, slamming into the ground. His head spun, the world disorienting, as the sounds of rushing air and shattering glass filled his ears. He could feel his pulse in his throat, each beat pounding louder than the last. The ground trembled beneath him. Then silence. Jason blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog from his mind. His body ached, his heart thundering in his chest. Slowly he sat up, groaning as the movement sent waves of dizziness through him. The world around him was different now, still, but in a way that was wrong. He wasn't in the sanctum anymore. He was somewhere else, somewhere he shouldn't be. He looked around. The sky above him was a sickly red, fractured with strange angular clouds that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The landscape stretched out like an alien wasteland, the familiar crystalline structures now jagged and broken, half buried in the shifting sand. And then he saw it, his ship. The wreckage of his ship was strewn across the barren plain, like the broken remnants of a forgotten dream. Its metal shell glistened with a strange, oily sheen, and the smoke rising from its jagged hull twisted into the air like a dark ribbon. He had returned, but not in the way he had expected. His breath caught in his throat. He staggered to his feet, desperate, his pulse racing. No, this can't be happening. But it was. He ran toward the wreckage, the heat of the air burning his skin, his thoughts a frantic blur. As he neared the twisted remains of his ship, a figure stepped forward from the smoke. Zila. She was there, standing amidst the destruction, her expression serene, almost peaceful. She was waiting for him, her dark eyes fixed on him with a quiet understanding. Jason stopped short, his body frozen in place. What is this? What did you do?" Zila's lips parted in a slow, sad smile. "You have always known the truth, Aryan. You are mine, as I am yours. The ship, the crash, all of it. It was part of the cycle, part of the story that was always meant to happen." Jason stumbled back, the world spinning, his legs threatening to give way beneath him. "This isn't real. This can't be real." "Can it?" she asked softly. stepping closer, her presence overwhelming. You thought you were stranded, lost, but you were never lost. This place, this world, it's the one we always return to. Our final meeting. No, it's not. I'm not. Her fingers grazed his cheek again, and in that touch, something deep within him shifted. A memory he couldn't control flooded through him, his hand in hers, their voices mingling in the quiet night, promises whispered in the dark. I don't understand, he whispered, his voice breaking. You will, Zila replied, her tone soft and final. You already do. And with that, the world around them changed again. Jason blinked, his heart racing, and the wreckage of the ship was gone. He was back in the sanctum. The columns gleamed, and the air was still. Zila stood before him, her expression soft, her eyes filled with the same eternal patience. I've been waiting for you, Arian, she whispered, and in her voice, Jason heard the faintest echo of something ancient and unspoken. A shiver ran through him, the truth finally breaking through the walls he had built, shattering them to dust. He wasn't just a man who had crash-landed on an alien world. He wasn't just Jason Marlowe. He was someone else, someone who had come here over and over again, across lifetimes to be with her, to be with Zila. And in that moment, he understood.